Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session. Today, we are going to have a very interesting session about how to create a new CRM implementation.
Interesting.
It's going to be general for any CRM out there. In this session, we have today David Polsky. He's our COO dealing with big accounts. Hello, David.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. So you're coming from an angle of big accounts, big implementations. You have experience with billions of dollars businesses. I'm more on the small to medium size implementations. And tell me a little bit about your experience so the audience will see why, if there is a good reason to believe to what you're going to tell us today.
Well, first of all, you'll know the truth when you hear it, right? So when you hear us talking today, you're going to know what you're hearing is the real deal. But I can tell you, I've got 30 plus years of experience. For the last decade or so, I've been working as a fractional interim CIO for large organizations. I've been part of dozens of implementations over the year, including many CRM implementations. And Lior, you make a very interesting contrast when you talk about large companies, large organizations, big implementations versus smaller companies with smaller implementations. I can tell you CRM implementations, small, large, they have tons of similarity. They're very much the same in terms of implementations. What differs is scale, and what differs when you're talking about driving user adoption, the things that you have to do to scale the size of, they're all going to be the same in terms of they're only going to be successful implementations if you get really good user adoption. But the idea of how you drive that user adoption, that's sort of the fundamental difference I've seen with really large organizations and small organizations. For example, with like a dozen people, you can literally have one-on-one sessions with each person to drive user adoption. When you've got 1,200 people in your sales organization, you've got to have a very structured program for training, and you've got to have adoption expectations, like right in people's comp plans. So how you approach it, differs with really large organizations. But we can talk more about that as we get into kind of specifics of what implementations look like. When we talk about CRM too, maybe we should set the table a little bit. CRM stands for client relationship management or customer relationship management, depending on what your preference is. And traditional CRM has really been about the sales funnel. It's about taking leads and flipping leads into opportunities and then opportunities into projects as you kind of reduce it to get it to live business. But these days, with the capabilities of CRM platforms and CRM tools, it's more about sort of that whole view of the customer, starting from the lead and bringing the funnel. But also, if you've got someone in your sales organization who's going to go do a customer visit, to be able to get that full view of a customer, including like how many open tickets do they have they had a problematic implementation, are things running smoothly for them, do they have great user adoption, how's the tool working for them, that whole holistic view. So when you go talk to a customer, they know you really understand who they are, what business they're in, and how things are working. I think that if you're choosing the right partner and the right platform, you can really equip your sales force to have a really effective interaction with a customer or a prospect.
There is also a nice direction lately that CRMs are a little bit more than a CRM. You will have CRM systems like Zoho, for example, that they will have Zoho CRM and a way to manage your manpower and recruiters and accounting system and so many things. So it's all in one tool, which all of them are talking to each other. So it's reducing the need to have 40 different applications to run the business.
And I think you also can use the capabilities of AI and something like a customer data hub to really, really know at a detailed level who this customer is, and you can really do targeted selling. You might have two customers, if you look at a small business that does $1 million a year in the manufacturing space, those two businesses look very similar, right? They're around the same revenue, they both live in the same space, but based on what they manufacture and what they sell and what their competition looks like, they might have very different needs and a very different approach to them. And so if you only know a little bit about that potential customer, you're gonna hit them up the same way every time. But if you have some really good, significant data about who they are and what they do, then you can have a really, a laser focused targeted approach to them. And so that's part of why you're looking at the sophistication of CRM, that if you can deploy something very sophisticated, you can be far more successful if you go to a prospect and really show them that you understand the challenges they have and you understand the business that they're in.
One example, we had a client with a very interesting case. They were working with one of their key clients, the ones that will bring you, 30-40% of your revenue. And the salesperson contacted the company for more business. What the salesperson didn't know is that they have multiple tickets open with the company and they are really frustrated. Instead of waiting a few more weeks until those tickets will be solved, and then, come to the customer and try to sell more. So the first requirement from them was that they want their salespeople to know all the time what is the temperature of the account. If they're angry, if they're happy, what's going on. And based on that, the salespeople will take direction, which in the new age CRM systems like Zoho, for example, from the CRM, I can see immediately if there are any account receivables issues, if there are open tickets, what's the temperature. I know exactly what's going on in 1 second without putting too much effort into it.
I've seen that exact situation multiple times. And you kind of, if you're unaware and you walk in and try and sell something to a customer that's hot, it's like walking into a buzzsaw. And I can tell you, if somebody's got a toothache, if you're not the dentist, they don't want to talk to you, right?
Right.
And so if you, as a salesperson who wants to make a call and you go look and you see that there's tickets and there's escalations, you can delay, or what you can also do is you can dig into the tickets, dig in with the execution part of the organization, figure out what is wrong. And then when you go visit the customer, you say, okay, first of all, before we talk about these things, I want you to know I looked at some of your open tickets. I've escalated it internally. We've got our best guy working on it. He tells me he thinks he's got a solution. Probably by tomorrow, this problem should be solved for you. Right. All of a sudden, you're bringing great news, and you've helped them move things forward. And then they're going to be willing to hear you because you're the dentist, right? You fixed the toothache. Now they can talk to you.
One more point that I like to raise. So, in my world of the small, medium-sized CRM implementations, we see that when customers or prospects coming to us with failed implementations, they would always talk about features. So they will say, I would need a blueprint for my CRM, instead of saying, my business problem is that I'm getting multiple leads coming from different sources. Those leads needs to come to the right place. So they would go directly into the feature. Now, what I see, and you will tell me what you think about it, I think that the strategy supposed to bring the features. So first of all, it's what is your pain point? And based on the business pain point or growth or anything to do with the business problem, based on that, the partner is supposed to bring which features supposed to be used, what's the approach, maybe provide the business multiple options and the business can choose what's the best for them. What do you think about that?
I fully agree. A lot of the CRMs offer a lot of the same feature sets. It's really going to be, how do you use it? Look, if you look at a pile of lumber and a pile of tools, if you're not a carpenter, you're not going to be able to build that into a desk, right? It's just going to be a pile of stuff, right? If you've got the right partner that understands how to use the tools and how to use the wood, you can build a nice house, right? So it's really going to be about the expertise and experience of applying those features to solve business problems. Just like it's like you're applying the hammer, the nails, and the wood to build something. So that's all features are, right? Features are, they different features appeal to different customers in a different way. And I think you said something really, really important that we'll probably talk about again, which is it's got to be business driven and it's got to be about problem solving. If you're going to do, feature for feature's sake, then you've got a technology driven project. In my experience, I can tell you, after 30 years, I have never seen a technology driven project succeed. It's got to be a business driven project.
Same here.
Technology is an enabler, right? And if you're smart and you can use the technology to solve the problem, then you're way ahead of the game. But it's got to be driven by what the business needs.
Yeah, I see the same thing. Business have business problems. Business, is not. It's not a place that people will have feature problem. And we see it again. The prospects that's coming in will always have the pain point that they are facing, and this is usually what the developer was talking to them. A point about that before we move on. So let's assume that I'm a developer. I've never managed, multiple employees. I've never owned offices. I don't know what is a spillage in terms of leads and how much money leads cost me, and so on. Whenever the business will come with business problems, such as, I bring 100 leads a month, and those leads are going to the garbage because people don't contact them fast, a business owner immediately feels the pain. A developer never had the pain. A developer cannot feel the pain because he never been there. And that's, I think, where is the disconnection. The developer is working based on features. And I don't want to sound like developers are not important. They are critical, but at the second point. Point number one, there need to be the business side, and the business side is supposed to translate those problems to the developers, which are critical to the success of the CRM implementation.
I completely agree with that perspective and what you say. There's sort of different words I use to describe that. It's the what and the how. The business has to say what they need and what has to happen. It's a developer then says, here's how we get there from here. Here's how we solve that problem. And so it's the nature of the role and the level of thinking. The developer is always going to be thinking about the how, because that's their job. It's the business partner and it's the functional side and the business side that needs to be thinking about the what. What is it you want to do? What is it you want the software to do? What do you want to get done? If it's about tracking lost leads, if it's about making sure you capture all leads and that you don't have something slipping between the cracks, that's the what. And then you explain it to the developer, and the developer's like, okay, here's how we capture them all. Here's how we stack them all in one place. Here's how we report against progress on leads or funnel reporting. It's all going to be driven. And I use sort of that what and how split between those roles.
So let's assume that you have client coming to you or a company coming to you, and they want to implement a CRM. How do you know which type of CRM to provide, or what is the right decision for their business?
So I think it's very important to have the conversation and explore what is it they're trying to do. Is it that they feel like they've got lost leads? Do they feel like they've got too much distraction? Do they feel like they don't have good visibility into the activities of their salespeople? Do they have no way to distinguish between who their successful sellers are? What does success look like? I think the wrong thing to do is to do a bake-off. Let's just pick our CRM based on features. I mean, I talked a little bit about features at the beginning. It's really not. It's a lot of the CRMs, set the table in the same way. I think what you really want to do is spend your time choosing your partner. If you choose a partner that's experienced, that knows how to deploy, they know the right questions to ask you about what it is you're trying to do. They know how to take then what you want to do, and they know how to map it out and process flow your lead management. They know how to create the training platform so that your salespeople aren't overwhelmed with the new tool, but they understand how to interact with the new tool. I think it's also very important for your sales team to understand, how does the tool benefit them? When you first think about CRM and funnel management, it's often driven by management because they want visibility into what the salespeople are doing.
Right.
And that is definitely a benefit stream that CRM brings. But then, if you think about it only from that perspective, then the salespeople feel like, okay, so they want to put in a new tool so they can monitor us, so they can watch us, so they can measure us. You have to have a partner that really understands that a CRM tool can greatly benefit the people that are using it at the base level. Right. And if you think about the training that you can deliver, and if you think about the sophistication of CRM and the AI tools, can you imagine someone who on the sales side who's written the same introductory email 57 times, who's sent the same follow-up email 57 times or 5,700 times? If you use something like AI and, templated responses and AI generated responses, you save a lot of that workaday stuff from the salespeople. It's much better to have their time out in front of a customer than typing stuff and then sending out those emails. So
also it can be done in a nicer way, right? AI writes much nicer emails than salespeople.
That's a great point, because sometimes you have salespeople who have the gift of it and they can just, their fingers fly across the keyboard and they produce prose. But I think more often than not, you've got someone who's got good way in person with people, but don't always type the cleanest emails. And so you never ever want to look sloppy in front of a prospect or a customer. And AI lets you have consistency and lets you have sophisticated writing, to the level that you want. So I think that you make a great point.
And one point regarding employees. So we do see, for example, that in most cases, employees will object to move to a new CRM or any CRM because they do know that eventually the goal is for management to have some more controls. You will have, from my experience, I will see two groups. Group number one will object and will say, nope, we're not going to do that. And some people will say, yeah, we love it. But they will sabotage the process without saying it. And those are the scary ones. What I found during the years, it's from the beginning, when we're architecting the solution, we will bring those employees to the architect sessions, and we are going to ask them, what do you want in the system that will work for you? The entire system is built for you. So let me know what's the best for you. And we will see what kind of automations will help them, what type of processes. And we found that that's a game changer. It's like they're part of bringing this baby to the world. And whenever the baby is out, they really want to adopt it.
Yeah, really, you've touched upon one of the fundamentals of change management. The more a change is going to impact someone, the more you need to involve them in bringing that change about. And if you do involve them in it, then they'll embrace it, they'll adopt it. I can tell you a recent example of working with a client. They have a team of about 20 people. A few of the people had never used CRM, and a few of the people had used a particular CRM. And the company made the strategic direction to choose a different CRM than those people were experienced with. And it was driven by cost. It was driven by how rapidly they could deploy it. And so the company made the decision. And you talk about potential undermining. The folks that were familiar with CRM A and didn't want to learn CRM B, they really weren't using the system. They didn't use any, they didn't adopt it, and they really kind of undermined the deployment. And I can tell you one of the failure points for that particular implementation, and it's sort of a pitfall to avoid, was the company did not require everyone to use it. And there's actually two failure points. One was that executive sponsorship wasn't there, that the sales leadership every day saying, I don't see any activity in here, I'm assuming you're not doing any work, like forcing them for user adoption. But also, I think you made a good point about it. The training they provided was very passive training. They invited them to demos, and they sat and watched somebody else's mouse move on the screen.
It's entertainment.
It's entertainment. It's not training. If you force their hand on the mouse and you have them do it, and you say, okay, I want you to go put a lead in the system. Show me how you would do it. I mean, you literally, it's almost like you almost have to treat them like kids. Like you did, this is what you got to do your homework. If you don't do your homework, you're not going to pass in school, right? And so you've got to force that user adoption. And like, it's unfortunate to say force, but you have to force it. And even to the point of, making it part of somebody's comp plan, that if you're not putting the activity in there, your comp is reduced or delayed. I mean, salespeople, I don't want to say this in an insulting way, because salespeople drive everything, right? They're the rising tide that floats everybody's boat, but they're somewhat coin operated, right? The activity and the things that they're going to do, they're going to be driven by their comp plans, right? And so that's a key tool. That's a key tool that you can leverage in trying to drive particular behaviors. So again, I don't say it in an insulting way. It's just a matter of fact way.
I see some, and also that I don't want to sound insulting in any way, but sometimes there will be weak management. And when management is weak and they are not forcing their way on the company, as you said, some people will use the CRM and some not, which means the database, the CRM, is not the source of truth. You don't have there all the data, which means all the reports that I will get as management are crap, which means nothing good will come out of it.
Right. You got no pipeline visibility, no way to project, do sales projections. So go ahead, please.
I will give you a scenario that happened to us lately. Big company, again, in my world, like in your world, the implementations will be hundreds of users. In my world, about 200 users will be a relatively big implementation. The CEO delegated one of the least busy employees the job of finding the right vendor and work with them to create a CRM. Usually the people that are least busy, they are also the least in the company.
Least productive,
Least productive, right. And they don't really care much. And they started the operation with us. We told them from the beginning that we need management involvement, otherwise this project will fail. And he said, I am who you're going to work with. And we basically said, probably it's not going to work. And we disengaged. They went with one of my friends that own a different company. I won't say the name, but they went with them. And I told my friend that they came to us as well. And this is probably not going to work well. But because it was a big account, it was worth it. They went down the line. They started to work with them. And the implementation is a disaster. Now, the CEO is not coming against his employees, coming against the company who developed the CRM, which is all a pile of crap because it's not, there is no business needs. This employee don't really know the processes of the sales team and what they do and then automation and the emails they're running. Nothing is there. It's just a blank implementation. So it's a big, big problem.
You know, the wrong person in the wrong place can be very expensive. And that's a very good example, the wrong person in the wrong place. I can give you another example, wrong person, wrong place. You take somebody, and I saw this happen in a company, sales guy, great sales guy, makes quota, exceeds quota on a regular basis, and they need to fill a sales management role. So they take someone who's a great sales guy and say, okay, you're a sales manager. So they essentially completely changed that person's job and completely changed their job description, gave them no training. And so now they're a disaster as a sales manager because the skill set you need to sell is not the same skill set you need to lead other salespeople. And so they got to the point where, you know, he's moving towards being terminated out of the company. How was that good for the company to take someone who's amazing at sales, who's hitting or exceeding quota, and move them into a role where they're not as successful, they're not effective, and then terminate their employment? That's foolishness, right? And that's a leadership failure, right? If you can understand how to harness that skill set. Like, I understand the thinking. They're great at sales, put them in charge, they'll make a whole bunch of other people great at sales.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they're great at showing how they do it. You know what a smarter move for them would have been? Let's use this guy as our shadow guy. Every time we bring somebody new, we're going to have somebody shadow them. Just follow them around while they do their job for a week or 2 weeks. And just let them learn by osmosis and by watching them do it.
Right.
That's a much better way. And then let them just keep doing what they're doing. Now, I understand that sometimes people in sales have career aspirations and they want those promotions and they want to go into sales leadership. If you've got someone who's expressed that to you, well, if that's their career path and you want to support that, get them training. Teach them how to be successful in that role. Don't just put them in the role. You know, it's like throwing someone in the water and say, okay, swim. You got to teach somebody how to swim. They can be an amazing swimmer if you teach them. So again, you got to have the right person in the right place with the right skills, with the right training. And it's got to be management managed and management controlled. I mean, everything you and I have talked about when we've talked about implementations that haven't worked can all be tied back to management.
Management. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So let's jump to the way that the company should implement a CRM. So I like to split it to two. So group number one, you will have customizable applications. Group number two, you will have products. And let me explain. A customizable application will be something like Salesforce or any type of a CRM or any system that can be customized by a developer, which
Something
means you need
almost a development platform that you're buying.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to architect it properly. You need to get the business requirements. You need to have what are the software capabilities versus the business needs, combine them together, set a training plan in place, set who is going to be your level 1 support, level 2 support, and so on, versus a product that you just need to know how to click around. Click, 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 and this is how this product works. So me, for example, personally, I would never recommend a business to have more than one customizable application at the same time, because it's very lengthy process and painful. From the other side, I'm very much okay to run multiple products at the same time, because they require just training. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. You know, the customizable side of things, it's a big consumer of company resources. And so you've got people who have day jobs that they're supposed to be doing the things to run the company, and then you're taking away a portion of their time to work on these customizable projects. And if you have more than one, you're not doing the day job, the company stops functioning, you stop running the company because you're focused on too many of these applications. So I think it can overconsume on the resources. I also think that there's a tendency, and I'm going to get a little bit into methodology here, so I'll try not to have people roll their eyes back in their head. But when you're doing some sort of customizable project, I think the tendency is, and the thinking is still waterfall. Waterfall is sort of the old methodology where you get all of the requirements and then you do all of the customizing and developing and programming, and then you do all of the testing, and then you cut live. If you miss any one thing, it's very painful and expensive to go back and put that all the way in. Now, there is an agile methodology which does things in 2-week sprints, but that thinking isn't always there for custom applications. Certainly, if you're doing a custom web app or something like that, it lends itself to agile. So the risk of doing the customizable stuff is getting drawn into a long kind of waterfall project.
Yeah, it's really painful. I also, you always like to say that the fast eat the slow, which I think it's very much connected to that as well. I would always like to see implementation instead of a plaza, which is a 2-story block for 2 kilometers. I would like to see a building. So we build first story and see how that goes. If everything's good, let's build some automation on top of it and some processes, and we build it slowly, and also let the employees blend into the process. It's like me getting iPhone 15. I would probably use it like iPhone 1. I will take some pictures, or 4. I don't know what the first one was, but I take some pictures, maybe answer some phone calls and do some emails. But my kids, when they grew up from the first iPhone until now, they will tell me, Dad, like, oh, what are you doing? you can do this, you can do that. I grew up, without an iPhone, so I don't know really how to do all that.
So you're really talking about getting the right business partner, right? When you choose the right platform and you get the right business partner, they can lead you through everything, lead you to success. And your kids, I got teenagers in the house. That's my business partner when I get a new iPhone. When I try and take a picture, they're like, oh, you can do
they're
this
your business
the
partner.
camera. They're my business partner there because they have the expertise. And if you go where the smarts are, you go where the knowledge is, you're going to be very successful. So choose the right partner that can lead you through it, that knows how to get the value out of the tool. Like and one of the things I teach clients and customers is the difference between customizing and configuring. Customizing, it's expensive, it's slow, and it consumes a lot of company resources. Configuring, that's what the tool set is meant to do. And it's like you said, a click here and a click there. And what you have is a custom process. It's your process, but you don't have to worry about maintaining multiple code bases. You don't have to worry about when upgrades come, having to do a whole bunch of retesting. It's about the total cost of ownership. You can't just look at the project and how much it costs you to build up the project. If you look at like a 3-year TCO, a 3-year total cost of ownership, if you've got something that's custom code, that total cost of ownership is expensive because the platform you built it on, every 6 months, every 3 months, there's a new release, there's a new testing cycle. That cost of ownership, you've got to have a certain amount budgeted every year for that. Whereas if something that's configurable, you don't have to sweat those upgrades and your total cost of ownership is down. And you also don't want distractions from the business that you're in. If you're a fire alarm manufacturer, you need to be building fire alarms. You don't need to be spending your time on system maintenance and system updates. I understand that you're going to have a manufacturing department and an IT department, and IT focuses on that. But again, it's all about distraction from the core business. Do what you're good at.
we're the customer. We're talking about features. We still have a customer that is in the medical environment, also relatively big company. They have multiple clinics across the states. And we quoted him about $10,000 for a full process. And the process is on a blueprint. A blueprint in my world will be a bunch of buttons that behave like a flow. So when, let's say, a lead comes in, there will be 4 buttons. I was able to talk to the lead and we have a conversation. I was able to talk to the lead and there was no conversation because they're busy. I try to leave a voicemail or it's a junk lead. 4 options. And if you click, for example, on I was able to talk to the person and we had a conversation, it will lead you to more steps. So it's a step-by-step approach. We quoted him about $10,000 for a process. It's a very nice, lengthy process with lots of automations in the background. So you click on a button, a questionnaire is being sent. There is a follow-up on the questionnaire if the people answer the questionnaire or not. His employee was telling him that we are super expensive and they need to try to look around. And eventually he told him, okay, so just shop around and see if it's really the case. He went to Upwork, filed basically the requirements, and got about $300 for the same process. And when he came to me, he said, like, Lior, we're in business for a long time, but I think that something is off. And he showed me that. And I said, look, let's jump on a call with your future developer. And don't tell him that I'm also a Zoho developer. Just let's just talk about what he's going to provide you. And when we talked to the developer, he was going to sell him a blueprint, which blueprint takes about 5 minutes to do. It's drag and drop, few buttons, and this is the feature. But there was no brain around it. Brain, I mean, in terms of the CRM, not the developer. I don't want to insult anyone. The buttons were there, but if you click on a button, nothing happens. There is no automation, there are no processes in place. It's just a bunch of buttons. And I think this is, based on what you said, this is the difference between the strategy and the features, the button, the features, and the thought process around it that the partner needs to bring to the table.
So, the example you give, 10,000 versus 300, that's a big swing, right? That's very stark. But you talk about wasting $300, then waste $300 and you waste your time. When I have customers, clients, and they want to talk about the price and they're concerned about the price, I refocus the conversation away from money to what is the cost of failure. You can get someone to do this for half the price and have a failed implementation and you get nothing. And so you've wasted. So you didn't save any money. That's money thrown away because you still got to do it again. It's very expensive to have failed implementations. And it's well worth it to pay for experience, pay for expertise, and know that you're going to have a successful implementation. That's where it's well worth the money.
I'm writing a book now, finishing the book actually, about CRM implementations. And part of it is just checking statistics about CRM failures. Do you know what is the CRM failure rate in the world?
I don't know from a research standpoint, but I'm going to give you my gut on that. And I'm going to say it's probably 80%.
Yeah, it's 90%.
90, wow, holy cow.
Based on the CIO magazine, 90% failure rate. This is sick, right?
Yeah.
So
I have a theory why. I know that there's lots of articles written in top 10 reasons CRM fail, and each of those reasons are all valid. I totally get that. But I think CRMs are a little bit special. Any system implementation you do, if there's no user adoption, it's a problem, right? But if you're looking at just putting in like a general ledger, you're going to have accounts payable that maybe has user adoption, but maybe accounts receivable doesn't. There's going to be some value trickling in there, even if you don't have ubiquitous user adoption. CRM only works if you have really, really complete user adoption. Because
right.
If you as a sales leader are looking at your CRM and you're trying to do pipeline management and you want to see what your pipeline is or your sales projection, or if you're a manufacturer, you need those sales projections dictate how much stuff you build. Right, so it's an input to the MRP process, the manufacturing resource planning process. So CRM is going to be critical. That if you're going to do it like this, just you cannot half-ass it. if you're going to do it, you've got to do it all the way, and you've got to have full user adoption on a daily and a regular basis. I mean, every company wants to know, who are my best customers? Where can I get some more of them,
Of
right?
course.
That's only going to be found from analyzing stuff in your CRM. When you look at sectors, where are we successful? We're very successful in this sector. Okay, then let's penetrate that sector more. We're very successful in this geography. Why are we successful in this geography? Okay, because we happen to have two of our best salespeople in that geography. So it's not really about investing more in that area. It's about, let's learn what these two salespeople are doing that's making them so successful in this particular geography, right? The data informs activity, informs decision making, informs management, but that data is only valuable if it's full and
People do
complete.
it.
If it's full and complete. So even though every system needs user adoption, I'd say specifically CRM, it's make or break, and it's not, 60% user adoption is good. You got to be 100% user adoption.
All in.
If people aren't using it, if people aren't using your CRM, then they're not a fit for your organization. That's strong.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. I'm with you all the way on that. That's also connecting us to the next point, which is I call it, what is your why? Any process that is not a sprint, that is a long process, supposed to have a good why, a good reason behind it. Why do I need to push every day to try to make that happen? And I found that in CRM specifically, the first part, architecting the system, it's a bit painful, but not that much. Development is usually on the partner to do the implementation itself. And then you have the part that management's supposed to push: user adoption, training, changing the way that people work. Super, super painful. And if you don't have a good reason, such as my team spends over 20% of their time copy pasting, and we are losing just for that about $100,000 a year. That will not happen anymore, ever again. We are losing half of our leads just because people contact them very slow, because we need to copy paste information from emails to the CRM, and then someone calls them. There need to be a very, very good reason behind doing that. Same thing also for the user adoption. If the company will not have a good reason, a good why, they won't push hard on people to be part of the CRM. And I absolutely agree with you. Yes, you have a fantastic dashboard, but it's not accurate. The details are not correct because people don't really do it. Or your top guy that is the god in the company, he decides that Excel is better for him. And you have different people that, company will say, this guy is special, or he is exempt from the CRM. What do you mean? How is he communicating with the team? All the communication is done from the CRM. When the deal is progressing, it's being done automatically from this guy to the accounting team, to the execution, to operations. It's all automatic. So it's a big problem.
I think the why is very important, and there's a couple of different reasons. First, you got to think like a CFO in some ways. Why are we spending this money? Why are we making this investment? What are we going to get out of it? But there's also some of the stuff that's inertia, stuff that continues to happen, and until someone asks the why question, it's going to continue to happen. I can tell you, I heard this great story. I love this story. This mother is teaching the daughter how to cook this roast beef, right? So you take the beef out, you slice a little off this end, you slice a little off this end, you put it in the pan with a couple onions, you put it in the oven at 400 degrees. And the daughter said, why do you slice the ends off the roast beef? And the mother said, I don't know, it's the way your grandmother always did it. So they get on the phone with the grandmother and say, Grandma, why do you slice the ends off the roast beef? And she said, oh, my first oven was really small. And the beef, if I didn't slice off the two ends, you can see this third generation slicing off meat and throwing it away because grandma had a small oven, right? So you gotta ask the question why, because sometimes it's time for change, right? So I think the why is important. I also think the why is important in terms of I think maybe we should spend a little bit of time talking about this very important thing for every project, which is you have to ask yourself, what does success look like? How else can you possibly achieve success if you don't have a vision for what it is? You always have to say, what does success look like? And there's a trap that people will fall in terms of implementations. They think success is on time, on budget. Now, those are important things, those are important metrics, but that is not your definition of success for a project. If you have a vision of what you're trying to achieve, which is, I want complete visibility of my pipeline, or I want to have enough forecast information so I know what components to build, what products to build, well, then that's what success looks like, is I've got that visibility, right? And so people tend to stop and say, okay, so we're live, we're on, we're on budget, we're on time. Well, those are good things, those are good metrics. You got a good project manager, but that's not what success looks like. Success looks like achieving the vision, getting the benefits. The second you start to attach to that benefit stream, now you can talk about being successful.
Most of the cases, but 90% of the cases, when we have a new project, we first of all, we architect it together with the customer. And that's basically, for us, will be the blueprint for the future CRM implementation. And if we are able to meet 100% of the goals of this Lucy chart, the implementation guide, and it's on time and on budget, then we consider it as a successful implementation. Is it also working in your world with the big implementations?
When you're talking about a really big project, a big implementation, on time, on budget is a real rarity. And that's another reason why you can't just measure that for success, because when you've got a really big organization, you've got so many moving parts, you've got so much there that it's very hard when you do your functional design to grab every little piece. Now, it's not impossible to do on time, on budget, and it has to do with the degree of commitment you have to it, the degree of executive sponsorship. Those are metrics, on time, on budget. Those are metrics, and they are things that you want to drive towards. I think on time, on budget is easier to achieve with a smaller project, because by implication, the complexity is lower. But I think, I think you sort of touched on this earlier, the company is in pain point right now, right? They're losing leads. They've got a poor track record on follow-up on leads. Their close rates are low. They have no pipeline management. They have no visibility to what sales are going to be like. Some quarter is twice as big as the previous quarter. The next quarter is half as big. They just don't. So success for them looks like, okay, a proper process on lead triage, following up on leads in a timely manner, not losing stuff between the cracks, and having visibility to sales. Those are the four things that are most important to this company. On time, on budget is great, but if you're 30, 60, 90 days into the implementation and you've achieved these four things, that's what success looks like.
Got it. So because of the size, you can be off budget. In our case, if we stay on what the original implementation plan was, then we are always on budget. So if the client always is adding more things, then obviously it will change.
The magic always comes down to scope and scope control. And I find in larger implementations, and look, people can debate this, and you're going to have project managers that have their P&P, and they're going to say, I always have on time, on budget projects. But I'm telling you, with 30 years of experience working in dozens of different organizations, large projects, and I'm talking about projects that are $1, $2, $5, $10 million. I struggle to find an example in my history that was on time, on budget.
Because of the size, and it makes sense.
It's because of the size, and by size, by implication, there's always complexity.
But I think also that with smaller organizations, the owners will be directly impacted if the project will be with cost more or will take more time, because they're part of it. In big organizations, usually there is a board. I know that you sat on multiple boards.
Yeah.
So it's completely different. It's not my money. I'm just an employee, and I just care about my bonus or whatever I care about. So it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, you're a little bit farther removed. It's interesting about, urgency, because I was trying to think back, when have I seen projects that were on time? I can tell you there was a whole bunch of projects that were on time. I don't know if you remember, I think you're probably old enough to remember the year 2000. and all of the systems had to be changed to make sure that the clocks would all work and the
Yep.
systems would all work. That was not a movable deadline, right? Those projects had to be done by then.
Yep.
And I was involved in, I think, 3 different projects like that, and they were all on time, right? Because we had no choice but to be on time. So I find that's kind of an interesting thing, and maybe food for a future conversation, food for thought. Why is it when we really have to be on time, we can be on time?
Because you have a gun to your head and you need to make it on time. With
The
working with
failure is not an option.
with
In that
small
regard.
organizations, this is what we have as well. So a deadline is a deadline, and budget is budget. I can't go to a small business owner and say I need another $20,000. It won't fly.
That's not going to work, right?
Yep.
And I think the thinking too in a company like ours is, failure is not an option. We don't even consider that. It's just failure is not an option. We're going to
Right.
succeed. That's all there is. There's only success.
Absolutely. Now, when you have, for example, implementation, you will have probably the CRM as the core. You will have now a chat system that's supposed to be connected to it. You will have maybe a support system, like a ticketing system that needs to be connected to it, an accounting piece. There are lots of different applications that are usually part of any implementation. How do you choose the right applications and in what order? How do you determine that application A will be the first one that we're starting with versus application Z?
I have a rule of thumb that I always use, and it has to do with sort of speed to value for my customer, for my client. There are some things that you can deploy that start adding value right away.
Okay.
And so that also helps with the ROI, with how long till the return on investment happens. And so I start with something that can start giving benefit. And then those benefits can sometimes fund the remainder of the project and the remainder of the deployment of the other pieces of it. The ROI thinking has certainly changed over the years. And this is big company, small company. I can remember in the beginning of my career being part of projects that have, 24, 30, 36-month ROIs. And I can tell you in the last 10 years, I personally have not approved projects that have an ROI outside of 1 year. Companies have a desire to see a return on their investment inside the year where the money is spent. And so that also lends itself to that agile methodology of doing sprints, because you do something called MVP, the minimum viable product. That is like, let's not build the Cadillac. Let's just, build a cart on a couple of wheels and start rolling down the track. And then we can add a souped up motor, and then we can add leather seats, and then we can add some nice doors and some trunk space. And eventually we have this fantastic vehicle flying around the track. But let's just start rolling forward. Let's start moving. And so that to me is sort of dictates what I do first, is what can I start bringing value to my customer with first? And that's also a credibility thing, right? Customers want you to deliver value to them. And if you start doing that, then they're like, okay, I chose the right person. This is already going great.
Absolutely. And we do see businesses that we work with for many, many years. You know our reviews, right? We have like only 5 stars reviews in the last 11 years. It's exactly because of that. I think the feeling is that I always have a gun to my head, and also that's what management knows. And if we will not provide on time, on budget, the client will suffer, and that's the last thing that we want. And that's what's moving us. In terms of the which application to start with, for me personally, because I'm dealing with small size businesses, and small size will be, let's say, up to 200 employees. That will be, for me, small businesses. The quick wins, it's what will lead me. So if I know that I can spend less time and get a good result, that there will be a good return of investment, and there is not too much knowledge that's supposed to be transferred to the client, which means they can be up and running relatively fast, that will be a quick win for me. And this is where I will choose the application. It's not choose. That's what I would recommend the business. Eventually, the business will do whatever they want.
Right. And I think too that, one of the things that I think we do really well is we know our clients, we know our customers, and we do it because we got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we use them in that ratio. We ask questions and we listen and we learn and we understand our customers and we find out what's important to them and where are there are pain points, and we pull out the splinters and we fix the sore tooth. And we can only do that if we've listened and understood. I can tell you the secret sauce as to why we're so successful, and I'm going to spill the beans to the whole world watching this video. We actually care about our customers. We care if they're successful. We care that we leave them with a good impression and a viable product, and we care that we've added value to them. That's the secret sauce. Everybody knows now.
In some sales meetings that I'm part of, you see companies that's coming from a place that they've been held hostage by the developers that they work with. Because if the client don't know the system, the developer owns them. And as you know, we work in a little bit different way. So from the beginning, when I see something like that, I will say, you're afraid to be our hostage, right? And oh yeah, I already had multiple cases. No problem. Every delivery meeting is being recorded. You're getting those recordings. We're showing you what was done, how we did it, and how to use it. In addition, we have the academy that we created, full-size courses. You have access to all of them for free. You can get trained. We can be your level 1 support, level 2 support. You can implement with us and never see us again. It's all good with us. And this is part of what you said, that care about the customer. My interest is for you to have a profitable quality business. And that's it. This is where it ends. And if I can make some money on it, it's awesome. If not, it's also okay.
The old expression, right? You give somebody a fish, you feed them for a meal, you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. We not only teach you how to fish, we give you a boat, we give you a fishing rod, we give you line, we give you a net. We make sure that you can be amazing at fishing. I mean, it's the only way to do it, right?
Let's talk about support. It's a big pain point that I saw. And I will include few things. So you have training. You have level 1 support, which means the go-to, create me a new user, I need a small report, all the small go-to. And you have level 2 support, I need a full automation, a full process, system is not working anymore. How do you function with those three? Because they can really kill an implementation and also a working project.
So that is answered differently based on customer size. Really large customers have big internal IT shops, and 100% of the time will take level 1, and quite often will take an escalation for level 2, and then the vendor, the partner, becomes the level 3 support for anything kind of significant. The smaller to medium-sized customers don't have that kind of infrastructure. Some of them they've got one person who's a super user who's kind of the level 1 support. When there's problems, everybody
that's usually the case. Yes,
turns to them to do stuff. So I think that if you're working with a partner that you've got the ongoing relationship and you've got that comfort level that you can turn to them and they can be your level 1 or your level 2 support. And I think that, the ability to solve things rapidly. And I think teaching customers too on how to qualify an issue. Is this something that's stopping you from doing your job? That's a 5-alarm fire, right? That's a priority 1. That's all hands on deck. Let's fix that right away. But if you've got a report that doesn't have this column and you've kind of always wanted to have this this column and it's not in there,
nice to have.
Okay, it's nice to have. It's not it's not a P1, maybe it's a P4. But that doesn't mean you can't have it. You should have it, right? But understanding how to qualify these things, these asks, so that your partner knows how to respond. So I think it's a lot about training. Also, if you're going to have somebody be kind of level 1 internal support at a customer, then you need to equip them with tools. You give them some training, but you also, show them where they can look up answers and what resources they have and documentation and videos and courses and stuff like that. All the stuff that we offer as part of our packages that they can reference.
We had a customer, it started as a prospect, as a pharmaceutical company. You know them, I won't mention the name. They came to us and they've been offline for 3 days. Their accounting system was down. Now, when we checked it, their accounting system is working based on APIs. And in every CRM system, you will have packages for APIs. So you can consume up to 100,000 API calls a day, 10,000 a day, whatever. And when you reach above this limit, your system will stop working because there are no more APIs. And that was the only thing. They just had to buy more APIs, but there was no one qualified to give them the answer. And they were 3 days down. It's a big pharmaceutical company, tens of thousands of dollars, every day being wasted, reputation damage, and so on, just because there were not enough APIs and no one was able to find this problem. So that's also connected to the level 2 support, someone that you need to establish relationship with from day one, even have it ideal. So no money is being exchanged, but you have someone that is there for you. And we, by the way, as a company, and I'm sure many others, we're not charging money to be your level 2 support. We will have the agreement and everything. We will not charge you money for it. And if you need us in the future, at least we know your system. We know what's going on. And it's not, you don't need to fish for a new vendor at the same time.
Yeah, you talk about RCA, right? Root cause analysis. You need the experience and the depth of expertise. Your example of the API calls, to know even to look there. That's the experience. That's, having worked with, literally hundreds of customers, you want that depth of expertise. Look, a pharmaceutical company is good at pharmaceuticals. They're not necessarily good at doing root cause analysis on a CRM system, right? We're a CRM system deployment company. This is what we do.
Right.
You want us finding the problem. You don't want to try and hunt around. And also, bad on that client that they beavered away at it for 3 days. You know what? If you've got something critical that's down, you need to ask for help sooner than that.
Look, I know that they tried, but they were not able to find the right solution. And that was the problem. In any case, they're good now. In terms of implementation, so let's say that you have a timeline. How would you recommend companies out there to structure their implementation timeline? So some kind of a framework or a template that it will be easy for them to understand how to take this entire implementation and bring it on time. Obviously, I can't say in 6 months, the implementation needs to be ready, and hope that I will reach the 6 months and it will be ready.
So I can tell you there's a couple of secrets to doing that. Essentially, you're talking about project fundamentals, right? You need to establish your timeline. Your timeline has to have milestones built into it. And you've got to make sure that you've got your resource allocation properly set. But there's something that I do that I don't know that every project manager does, is I weave in risk management into my timelines. I can give you an example, right? If you're supposed to start development on June 1st, right? You need to have all your developers, with access and platforms and everything, and with functional documents ready on May 31st, right? And so if you don't have all your developers lined up and ready to go by May 31st, you're not going to be able to start your development June 1st, right? And so the risk you might have is you don't have enough skilled developers to do your execution, right? So if you've got a task in there that is developers assigned ready to go by this date, if you don't meet that, you're not going to be able to meet your development start date, right? So anything that you identify as a risk, which is, okay, I won't have enough talent ready at a particular date and time, or I won't have client participation at a particular, they won't do sign off. If client has to sign off on the functional design document, if they don't sign off on the 15th of the month, then we can't start. Well, then that's a risk. That means client sign off has to be in the task plan, because if they don't do it, then it has implications, right? So anything that's a risk that has implications, I believe that you need to have a task-based approach. You need to have a task in related to that risk. But everything else in terms of a successful implementation are the fundamentals that, project managers have been doing forever. Is you identify your resources, your milestones, you project it out, and you make sure that you're tracking to that. I also think that the most important thing in any kind of a project is communication. Communication between the resources doing the work, between the technical and the functional people, between the partner and the customer. Customers have to know what's going on, and super important. And I think I can chalk this up also to communication, is you need to be descriptive in your milestones. You can't just say a milestone is this and put 3 words and that's it. Why is that a milestone? Why is that important? What does it mean if you get there? Like, you want to launch UAT because the code is done. That's a milestone. Well, what's good about that? Well, system is largely ready. You're moving into testing, right? That's an important milestone because at this point, no more requirements, no more changes.
Yep, we
You got to
stop
kind of lock
everything.
it down. Let's go into test mode, right? So that milestone is a meaningful milestone. Everybody has to have a common understanding of what hitting that milestone means, right? And that comes down again to communications. It's not just talking, but documenting things and describing things correctly in your plan. I also think too that communications to the customer throughout are very important. Quite often there's a chunk of time where we're just off building stuff per the functional requirements, right? And there may be a few days or as much as a week or two where we're just doing our thing. Customer doesn't necessarily hear from you while you're doing your thing. I really feel it's important to reach out during that period of time to let customers know, hey, we're tracking, by the way. This was supposed to be a 5-day task. We're 3 days in. We're right on target. We will deliver at the point of 5 days. So they don't spend that whole 5 days going, well, I sure hope it's going to be done at the end of the 5 days, right? You
Right.
gotta include your customers in the progress, even if it's not a task that's tied to them. So again, that comes down to communications and being and transparency, openness. There's no secrets in projects. Projects and implementations, everybody has to know everything about what's being done when, always.
In the small business world, it's a little bit different because we cannot include so many people, right? Because otherwise the project will be so expensive that the company will not be able to survive with it, and no, the project will not fly. We usually will have fewer milestones, and the account manager is usually taking some of the responsibility. For example, the account manager will know the business side, and he will also know the technical side. So the account manager is meeting with the customer on a weekly basis. So every week there is a meeting, even if the meeting is just we're on track, but there will always be a meeting. In the meeting, they will go over the deliverables, what was delivered. The account manager is always prepared with the testing, so they will test along the way. So there is not really a milestone for testing. Every milestone is being tested all the time, and then there will be a delivery, and the delivery means that the client can start playing with it in test mode. So the client is not really getting a solution to start working in live environment. So the customer is playing with milestone 1, and we work on milestone 2. And as we go, those 10 milestones being tested along the way, and the final delivery is basically the entire solution, but the client already played with it for the last 3 months.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit different.
You mentioned something important there, right? And something that we should have led off with, which is the project management framework that you use has to be right sized based on the size of the project. If you're doing something that's 3 weeks long, there's no reason you can't use a spreadsheet with 6 bullets and a couple of dates, and that's just sort of loosely how you track it, because you're just going to be working for a few weeks, but you still need to be a little bit organized about how you do it. And if you're doing an 18-month project and you're spending $10 million, you're going to use Microsoft Project. You're going to have dependencies. You're going to have tasks tied to each other, and you're going to have 1,000 lines that you're going to manage to. Well, based on the size of the project, you need to fit the framework around that. As you know, we do projects from a couple thousand to tens of thousands, and so the amount of governance that we use
It's
scales
different
up and down to fit the project, right?
Right. In the past, for this point, before you came to us, we used Zoho project. It's like Microsoft projects. We use Zoho projects for any project. And the problem is that even if it's just config 10 DLC, which is a government requirement, it takes about 40 minutes to do. It's $100. That's what it costs. It takes about 5 hours to config the project, set it up in Zoho projects, work with management, work with admin, collecting payments. So for 40 minutes job, you have 5 hours just to manage the task. Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense. And you got to fit, the governance has to fit the project size, right? And maybe for that, we use a ticket, and it's just a ticket. We do the work and we close the ticket and we invoice, like
And that changed thanks to you. Now we're not operating this way. So you did lots of good stuff here. This is one of them.
It's all about right size.
Okay. So David, I think we covered everything. Is there anything else you want to add before we close the session?
I think one of the most important things we talked about today, and I'm just going to repeat it, don't go shopping for software, go shopping for the right partner.
I absolutely agree with that. And what from my side is the most important for the small business side will be that companies needs to concentrate on the strategy, and the features are always secondary, and they complement the strategy. But without strategy and people that go, okay, I need a blueprint, I need CRM, this is all nonsense, it's noise. There need to be strategy, there need to be a plan, there need to be a way to manage and measure the project, if it's successful or not, and then the features will fit in.
Well said.
Okay, Mr. David Polsky, was wonderful talking to you as always. Thank you for jumping on this session. Thank you very much.